So, some time has passed, years even. Mordecai had saved the king's life. Esther had reported it, and it was recorded, but nothing happened. Instead, as we turn to chapter 3, another man, our antagonist, the enemy in this story, is honored and introduced to us. He is Haman the Agagite. And in just a few moments, our inciting incident will occur. But first, an act of defiance. For there may already be a bit of history between Mordecai and our antagonist Haman. Verses 2-6. All the royal officials at the king's gate knelt down and paid honor to Haman, for the king had commanded this concerning him. But Mordecai would not kneel down or pay him honor. Then the royal officials at the king's gate asked Mordecai, "Why do you disobey the king's command?" Day after day they spoke to him, but he refused to comply. Therefore they told Haman about it to see whether Mordecai's behavior would be tolerated, for he had told them he was a Jew. When Haman saw that Mordecai would not kneel down or pay him honor, he was enraged. Yet having learned who Mordecai's people were, he scorned the idea of killing only Mordecai. Instead, Haman looked for a way to destroy all Mordecai's people, the Jews, throughout the whole kingdom of Xerxes. What a strange sequence of events. Mordecai, a man, a servant, or slave who had only ever served the citadel in humility and with honor, now all of a sudden defies and rebels against the king's authority. Mordecai ignores the inherent hierarchy and assumed sense of submission and refuses repeatedly to bow before the king's honorary official. And on top of that, we're told somewhat randomly that Mordecai suddenly tells others that he's a Jew. Wait, what? Why? What sense does this make when we've already been told repeatedly that Mordecai and Esther had been keeping their nationality, their ethnicity, their true citizenship a secret? And the truth is, the only explanation we have here is the form and function of our story, reminding ourselves that this was intentionally written with a lot of theatricality, intended to be a comedy of errors. You see, because the story of Esther was written in a specific way in order to establish a new annual festival, the Jewish festival of Purim, which gets its name from the calendar day selected in verse 7. And so when the story of Esther turns melodramatic and includes exaggerated emotion, we have to remember that these scenes and actions, while rooted in historical events, exist to serve the form and function of this theatrical story. Which might also help to explain why Haman's reaction to a lowly slave or servant seems more like an overreaction. You see, because for our big bad antagonist, it's not enough for him to punish this single slave or servant. Oh no. In order for Haman to be satisfied, he believes that Mordecai's entire people must suffer. All the Jews everywhere must be erased. And if this were in fact a melodramatic performance or work of theater, this would be the moment Haman unleashes his maniacal laugh. But of course, as much fun as it might be to elevate the story's form and function in this way, we must also acknowledge that Haman's motivation and reaction to Mordecai's rebellion is in fact rooted in history. You see, because it's no mistake that when we're introduced to our antagonist, we're told that he is Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agagite. You see, because it's believed by many scholars that the Agagites were descendants of the Amalekites. And in Scripture, in the Old Testament, the Amalekites were a people known for their defeat. In both Exodus 17 and 1 Samuel 15, the armies of Israel defeated and destroyed the Amalekites. At two different times in history, the Amalekites had been defeated by the Israelites. And now, 500 or 600 years later, the few remaining descendants of the Amalekites, now known as the Agagites, still hold a historical grudge against the Jews. 500 or 600 years later, the descendants of Amalek define themselves by their defeat at the hands of the Jews and allow the pain of their forefathers to hurt them and haunt them. Which is why Haman responds the way he does. verses 8 to 11. Haman said to King Xerxes, "There is a certain people dispersed among the peoples in all the provinces of your kingdom who keep themselves separate. Their customs are different from those of all other people, and they do not obey the king's laws. It is not in the king's best interest to tolerate them. If it pleases the king, let a decree be issued to destroy them, and I will give 10,000 talents of silver to the king's administrators for the royal treasury." So the king took his signet ring from his finger and gave it to Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agagite, the enemy of the Jews. "Keep the money," the king said to Haman, "and do with the people as you please." Here in chapter 3, our inciting incident finally occurs. The source of anger and conflict in our story has now taken place. Our antagonist and enemy has stolen the spotlight and revealed for us his true motivation: revenge. Due to an unreconciled history, Haman is a man who has inherited generational harm, and as a result has become embittered toward the people of Israel. When the Jewish people, or even a single person, is mentioned in his presence, Haman becomes enraged. He does not seek to be reconciled or come to terms with his past. He is not a man who is open to restoration or a new understanding. Instead, he seeks only revenge. He wants to eliminate the people, the race he has been brought up to hate. Standing now in a position of authority and power, this man, this human being, wants to do nothing but cause harm and destruction. To those who oppose him, no mercy will be shown. To those who stand in defiance, he seeks only one solution: genocide. Next time on Esther in Isolation. In united form and fashion, the children of Israel, upon hearing the declaration of their genocide, respond within the limits of their empirical oppression with weeping and wailing while wearing sackcloth and ashes. In other words, the people of Israel take a knee.